Hi there YouTube friends, welcome back to Auntie A's Kitchen. Today we're going to be making some delicious piccalilli, and if you've never tasted or even heard of this before, it's a popular British yellow coloured relish consisting of vegetables cooked in a mix of vinegar, mustard, turmeric and spices and then pickled. It has a wonderful tangy taste and goes really well with cheese and cured meats, and it's often served alongside a ploughman's lunch or a charcuterie board. And in fact, the next shorts video that I post, I'm going to be using some of this piccalilli in a ploughman's sandwich. So let's start by preparing a medium-sized cauliflower, and you're going to want to cut this up into equally sized smaller pieces so that they not only cook evenly but that you have the perfect size to spread as a relish. Nothing needs to go to waste, and normally any stalks that I have I'll keep, and depending on whatever I'm cooking that week I'll add them into a soup or even a cauliflower cheese recipe. And as you see, the last thing that I do is just run my hand over the top, and any larger pieces I then quickly cut them down before then placing everything into a large bowl. Next, roughly cut up 2 carrots into smaller pieces, and again, don't worry if you have some slightly larger or smaller pieces, as I think it adds to the character of the relish and gives it that rustic style. I believe in original recipes turnips are used, but I like to use parsnips as they not only bring a natural sweetness, but also being from the root vegetable family, they also help to bring a wonderful crunch to the piccalilli relish. Then all you want to do is also cut these up about the same size as you did with the carrots. Next, you're going to want to cut up 1 large courgette. Just make sure to cut out the centre part where all the seeds are, as this can hold a lot of water, and then just roughly dice this the same size as you did with the parsnips and carrots. The final 2 ingredients to prepare are your onions, and I like to use a mixture of shallots for their flavour and some silver skin onions. You can leave your silver skin onions whole, but I think it's better to cut them in half, as this helps them to evenly distribute in your piccalilli. This is a flexible recipe and you can use any variety of vegetables, but the only vegetable I won't use are green beans, and this is because they have a toxin in them that needs to be cooked away. And since we're only going to be cooking our piccalilli for a very short time so that everything has a nice crunch to it, I just don't use green beans. Once all of your vegetables are cut up, cover with 2 tablespoons of salt and mix with your hands so that everything is really well coated, and the salt is going to help to draw out the water. Then place into a colander or something with lots of holes so that the water can easily run out. I like to use the inside of my salad spinner, and then you're going to place this into a bowl and just make sure that it's elevated so that it's not sitting in the water that's just drained out. Then place this bowl into your refrigerator either overnight, or I like to leave it for several hours, so I'll usually prepare the vegetables in the morning and then I'll finish making the piccalilli late afternoon. As you can see, after several hours, lots of water's drained out. Then all you need to do is rinse off your vegetables to remove any excess salt, and then I just put them through my salad spinner to make sure that they're extra dry, and I set them aside until then we're ready to use them. If you're new here, may I say welcome. Just to let you know, you can find a list of all the ingredients and measurements that I use in today's recipe in the description under this video. And may I also ask that you would hit the like button, as this not only gives me a smile, but it helps the channel to grow. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, as there are lots more sauces and chutneys that I make from scratch on the channel that you might find useful. Next, you're going to want to measure out your vinegar and all of the spices and flour. And the 2 main spices that we're using are mustard powder, which is going to give your piccalilli its wonderful mustard flavour, and the turmeric, the piccalilli, its yellow colour. And we need the flour to help thicken up the sauce. Give all of your dry ingredients a good mix before then adding some of your vinegar in stages until it's well combined and you have a thin paste. Then just set this aside, and we're going to be using this later. Next, into a large heat-proof pan, add the rest of your vinegar. We started off with 500 millilitres, and I like to use a combination of malt vinegar and apple vinegar, but just using one is also okay. Then to this, add your sugar, and again I like to use a combination of brown and white sugar, but just using granulated is also okay. Then put this onto your stovetop to dissolve the sugar. On a medium heat, stir until you cannot feel any more grains of sugar, and at this stage you can add your spices mix that we prepared a moment ago. Continue to mix on a light simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes, allowing the sauce to thicken up. Another way I check that my sauce is ready is to look at the spoon, and as you lift it out of the pan, as I show you briefly in the video, when there's a residue left on the spoon, I know that it is at the right stage, and at this time you can then add your vegetables to the pan, making sure to mix everything in well. As I mentioned earlier, this is a really flexible recipe, and I find that every time that I make this, sometimes I need a little bit more liquid, and this often depends on the size of the cauliflower, carrots, turnips and courgette that I've cut up. So as you see in the video, I've added just an extra 100 millilitres of vinegar so that just about all of my vegetables are submerged, but do remember that as these cook down, they are going to release a little bit of water. While you're waiting for the piccalilli to come up to a light simmer, have a taste, and at this stage, if you need to add any extra salt or pepper, this is the perfect time. I felt it needed just a little bit more sweetness, so I add 2 cut up dates that bring a wonderful natural sweetness. Once your pan is up to a simmer, just cook your vegetables for about 5 minutes, which is going to start the process of them softening. They will soften even more the longer that you leave them in the jars. There are lots of different ways to sterilise your jars, but for me the easiest way is to place the jars into an oven 180°C for about 10 minutes, and I'll boil up some water on the stovetop and place the lids inside also for 10 minutes. This next part is an optional extra, but I like to cut out some cartouches out of baking paper, and this is not only going to help to keep the vegetables in the liquid, but it's also going to protect the jar lids. Now all that's left to do is to fill your sterilised jars with your homemade piccalilli, and my kitchen smells amazing. A quick tip is to make sure that you have enough liquid in each of the jars, and don't worry, it will thicken as it cools. You'll see me in the video, I use a small spoon just to push the vegetables, making sure that they're submerged in the liquid before then placing my paper cartouche in the jar, and then I'll seal it with its lid. I like to label the front, and I'll also put a sticker on the bottom with the date that I made the piccalilli. Finally, place your jars in a cool, dark place for about 5 to 10 days, which is going to allow the flavour to develop, and these really will taste better over time. Here we have, as you've seen in today's video, an easy to make homemade piccalilli relish, packed with flavour, and it will remind you of home. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to be sharing some other delicious recipes that I like to eat this piccalilli with. Thanks for watching.